of your screen because we're already hearing a little bit of background noise. And as you might imagine, that can be distracting to the presenter. The other thing I would like to point out to you is in that same menu bar, but further to the right, there is a chat box. There's a chat function. So if you click on that, you can enter in a question that you might have. I will be checking that periodically. If you are having any technical difficulties with the webinar projection, usually you can try to refresh your screen, which is usually F5. If that does not seem to work, then we would recommend that you leave the meeting and that you come back in. And I know that that is an inconvenience, but it's the only way that I know to make this thing work if it decides to go on the fritz. And in order to leave the meeting, on that same menu bar to the far right in red lettering are the words "leave meeting." Okay, so Noah, I believe that you're sending me a message. I just want to be sure that we are recording. Is that correct?
Yes, it is being recorded.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. And having already given the introduction for Dr. Jayne and wanting to give her the maximum amount of time for her webinar, I will hand the floor over to you, Dr. Jayne.
Thank you, Deb. I appreciate the introduction, and I'm excited about being here. Thank you to Sissy, my friend in your chapter, for inviting me and telling me about this. And I bring greetings from the North Texas chapter in Dallas to all of you guys.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to be here and excited. Yes, and on questions, I do love questions that you ask, so feel free to use your chat button if you have a question, and I think Deb is going to convey that to me as we go along. So let's get started. Divine intelligence is our topic, and make sure I can change the screen. There we go. Let me look at the purpose, explain kind of the purpose for today. I want to give you a broad understanding of new research in neuroscience that's applicable to coaching. Now, a lot of what I tell you today, you're going to say, oh, I knew that. Yeah, that's cool. I knew that. But what I think giving research behind it does is it gives more sense of confidence to our coaching. And we want to give quicker, more effective, and sustainable results for our clients in the change process. And that's what neuroscience, when you understand how the brain works, then you are able to affect change much more quickly. And I want you to understand something called spiritual coaching, which is kind of new to the coaching field a little bit. I own a spiritual life coach training company, so I want to explain to you a little bit about spiritual coaching. Let me tell you, first of all, kind of how is it different? And so the idea of spiritual coaching empowers a part of your brain that has the mental force or the spirit in it. In spiritual coaching, we go very deep into change. We change at a cellular level, and this is where we know how to do this based on science research. We go back, we change some of the patterns of the past. We change your beliefs before we change actions or behavior. And we focus a lot on emotions. That's how the brain changes, because we want to understand how the brain works so that we have sustainable change for our clients. Today, I just picked out 5 of my top neuroscience laws from my 2-day workshop on neuroscience and coaching, and I want to explain those to you. And then I look forward to actually doing a demo with a volunteer, and I will ask them for a goal that maybe they're stuck on or they're having difficulty with, and I will do a short coaching demo on how to use these neuroscience laws. And then I'll show how to rewire and also how this is applicable to coaching. And I'll remind everyone when I hear some interference that someone needs to mute. That's usually what is causing some of the background distractions. So if you'll check and just make sure that you are muted. Thank you. Let's look at neuroscience, how the brain works. First of all, what is it? And it is the flow of energy in the brain. We just have this neuroscience particular discipline. I need to remind you I didn't remind you to mute. I think that's what's happening, is someone needs to mute. Okay. I see someone on the screen that I think needs to mute. You want to help me out, Deb, on that? Or maybe we're getting it now.
Sorry, I'm unmuting myself. Folks, there is a menu bar. It is either at the top of your screen, the left of your screen, the top of your screen, and it may not be visible until you move the cursor there. We need everyone to mute themselves. And that mute button is in the far left of that menu bar. We are hearing like jangly type of background noise. If you happen to be joining us by telephone, please also be sure to mute your telephone, and that is normally a *6 or the mute button on your phone.
Okay, thanks, Deb. We may have to stop occasionally. I've led a lot of webinars, and using, no matter what software we use, it seems like it is difficult to keep everyone muted. So just occasionally, if you hear background noise, check your mute button. So let's look at what neuroscience really is. Years ago, 25 years ago, we didn't even have a discipline called neuroscience. And that was because we didn't know much about the brain other than what we speculated. Freud, Adler, all those early psychologists began to look at what they thought the brain was like, and many medical models projected what they thought it was based on what they could conjecture, but really we couldn't see inside the brain until we started having some of the more modern technology, like the PET scans, the MRIs, the functional MRIs. So now, after about 20 years of looking inside the brain, we have research that shows how the brain acts. And what they do is they study the flow of energy that's in the brain to study what part of the brain reacts to this and really how the brain works. I think the benefits of using neuroscience in your coaching are great. One, credibility with your clients. It could be the placebo effect. And I think that, well, I share neuroscience research with my clients. I tell them when we're going through my process, I tell them this is what's happening in your brain. And it takes a little bit of the stigma of I'm doing something wrong right now off of it. So I think it helps a lot. And then when you use neuroscience, you're actually learning how to integrate the brain. You're learning how to take the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere and aid in communication between the two and provide more coherence in the brain. Therefore, that's when we get our sustainability from what we do in coaching that carries over into their life. So the integration and understanding the coach receives, knowing what happens in the brain and body, gives you more confidence. You know, the brain, I've just always been fascinated by it. I love studying it.
Hi, honey.
It's one of the biggest, we could call it, computers in the world. We know that in the beginning, we have over 100 million neurons that are just like little cells when we're born in our body, but that have the capacity to connect in 10,000 different ways, each one of those cells. So as you see, we have over, well, let's say an infinite number of possibilities of what our brain can do, 100 billion. I got a perspective on that when I read that it was more than the stars in the Milky Way, more options. and also more than the grains of sand on this earth. We are unlimited. There are so many ways we now know that science is showing us that we are divine, we are omniscient, and we are able to do just about anything we want. Now, how do we do that? Well, let's start and just look at how the brain develops. I think I've just told you that the brain in an infant, when you're born, has all these neurons that are not connected into pathways yet. In fact, the brain is the only organ in the body that when you're born, it is not fully developed. So it develops as we go. That's why the environment plays such an important part in our brain, because our brain comes to the earth with what scientists call, what neuroscience call ipseity. I call it divine intelligence, but they put the word ipseity. I'm kind of fascinated by that word. But neuroscience say that when they study the brain of a newborn infant, they see that it is a smooth layer, almost like a ball of clay. And it has the ability to be so malleable and so molded by the environment that it truly is remarkable. Now, unfortunately, all of us, our brain becomes conditioned by the environment, sometimes in good ways, but sometimes it can be conditioned with limits, can it? And usually is for our survival. What we're learning now in kind of a new, within the past 2 or 3 years, research is showing that our brain is developed mirroring our earliest caregiver. And that the architecture of your brain, the neural pathways that are formed in your brain, are actually mirror neurons, are actually mirroring the architecture of your caregiver. So at this point, what we call whole brain integration, which is what we want in coaching, whole brain integration may start to actually come apart with what kind of a trauma or even just incidences that may put limits on us. So the brain, if you see this picture, just becomes covered up with layer after layer of limiting beliefs. And you can think of one already, because I told you our brain is unlimited. And so I'll bet you have been told that you have limits on what you can do as a person or as a coach, as just living your life. You see that you can't always do everything, and that's what you've been taught. Some of the hottest new research, and I think this is so exciting, is showing us that our brains, that our genes, we're not stuck with our genes. And it is kind of one of those limiting beliefs that we've always heard, that that genes control our biology. Didn't you just assume that our DNA was fixed? And so what we've learned is that the protein that switches, that controls life, those proteins within each of our cells, are primarily turned on or off by the environment, by what happens to us. So experience and environment influences gene expression, and that's becoming more and more seen in the research. They're malleable and can be changed. I want you to take note on this one as a coach, because we used to say in research, or, one of our core competencies, presence, our presence is so powerful with our clients. Well, we used to say when I was teaching students in my coach training school that, your presence is one important factor in how well the client will do, because you have big influence on them. Well, now what we're saying is that whether our client feels safe with us, whether that client, he or she, feels judged, and whether they feel like they connect with you, that safety, what I call safety, is the treatment. I want to repeat that creating safety is all you need to do. Because when we don't judge someone, we allow them to open up and say things that no other situation that they're in allows them to do, because there's always that risk in relationships in the world of how people will, what they'll think about you, or if you're, involved in them in the world, you just have to take that into consideration. But that's what's so unique about a coaching relationship, is that we provide the safety where people can say anything, isn't it? So I wanted to give you that research. And if you want any of this research and you're not catching it on the screen, feel free to email me later and I'll send it to you. But let's look at the first neuroscience law. Now, this law is basic to your understanding of some of the more important implications that neuroscience has on our coaching. Energy flows in the brain from the bottom up. Energy flows from the bottom up. Now I want to switch to the next slide. We'll come back to this one in a minute, but I want you to look at a picture of the brain. Now, neuroscience divide the brain into the most simplest form, the most simplistic form that the brain can take is called the triune brain, and they divide it into three parts. The yellow part you see is the visceral brain. And you see that little island jutting down, that's where our brain is connected to our nervous system. So when we have something that happens to us that scares us, the energy starts down in the nervous system and flows upward from the visceral brain, the yellow part, through the red is called our limbic system, where the amygdala is and where our feelings are located. And then it flows up into the neocortex, the blue part. So the reason I think this is so important is because when blood starts to flow from the brainstem or the visceral part, it may actually stop if there's enough fear in your body that the limbic system kicks in. Then it could be that you don't even get to use your neocortex, which is our highest functioning part of the brain. Anxiety can shut down the thinking brain. Now, you say, well, how does this impact coaching? We'll begin to see as we go through this demonstration that really the brain is so complicated, but so clearly that we know that the brain, the feelings we have, if we can't get past that, then we really can't think right. Now think about this. An executive calls you and you say, how are you? Well, great. And then you proceed to, well, what are we going to do in our goals today? Where are you? Blah, blah, blah. If he is secretly harboring a tension about a fight he had with his wife that morning, and if he is feeling agitated or fearful in any way, maybe she said, I want a divorce. I don't know. It could have been as simple as their child is upset about something. That emotion that he's got going on there is going to restrict the ability you have as a coach to utilize the most high functioning part of his brain, the neocortex. So what I want to tell you is there's no exception to this. We have to deal with emotions first. If we don't, we are limiting our outcome. Emotions are more powerful than thoughts, is one way we can put it. The reason I have this picture up is because it's so beautiful, for one thing, but I want you to not get confused when I talk about parts of the brain. So I've mentioned the three basic parts, and the other names can be the thinking brain is the same as the neocortex, several other names for that. The feeling brain is the limbic system, and the visceral brain is actually, I think we saw the yellow part, and we can call it the brain stem. So look again at this picture, and if you can watch my picture, Daniel Siegel does a really cool explanation of this with a hand model, and I bet many of you have seen that. So if you hold your hand up and look at my picture, and hold your hand up like this, and what we can do is when you close your hand and look at your fist, can be your brain from about here up. This is your nervous system, your wrist. And your brain is a little bit larger than your fist. So when you open up your hand, put your thumb across the palm of your hand like that. Now your thumb is going to be what's red on the picture on your screen. That's your limbic or feeling brain, because it is nestled inside in the middle of the brain. Now, when you fold your fingers over that thumb, this part, the finger part of your hand, is going to be your neocortex. So you can see that through this demonstration, if you have an emotional incident, and let's say your thumb starts to get agitated, that emotional brain starts to get agitated, you can see that it really literally kicks the neocortex out of the picture, and it is over here running your life, basically. And we know from our studies on emotional intelligence that that is not high emotional intelligence, is it? The neocortex, or the thinking brain, developed after birth. Remember, the brain isn't fully developed. So it develops, and that's the reason we can't remember anything the first few years of our life, is because we didn't have a thinking brain. The smarter the species, this usually is the way it is, the more happens after birth. And then it developed after the other two parts of the brain. So just remember, blood starts and goes up. And if you've heard, it's a common, PTSD is a common diagnosis in psychology. So we really say that the neocortex is shut down if you have PTSD. So again, what does this mean for coaches? An even better analogy, I used to work a lot with children, and if a child is waiting for the school bus that morning and overhears his parents talking about a divorce, let's say then he gets on the school bus, he's very upset, he goes to school, and that day the teacher is telling them they're going to teach their multiplication tables. They've got to memorize. You can understand how that child will not remember anything. Well, your client is the same way. If they are agitated emotionally, they are not going to remember anything that happened in that session that you may have thought was so brilliant, So I have a habit, and this is what I do with my clients. I just ask them at the beginning of every session, because I've educated them on how important emotions the part they can play in your life. So I start with a question: tell me emotional things that have happened the last week, so that we can discharge that emotion and engage the higher part of your brain. And they're going to tell you. Now, there are times when we spend our whole time on that. I won't deny that. And I think maybe it was important that we did. And be sure and send me questions if you have questions about this. So you've heard of the amygdala. That is part of the limbic system, or the feeling brain, and it's a bundle of neurons that are involved in negative emotions such as fear and anxiety. If you could get rid of the fear in your client's life, or at least dissipate it some during a session, you wouldn't have to do anything else, because when that fear is quieted, when the amygdala is quieted, then they're going to all of a sudden have access to a higher part of their brain, and they can come up with more creative solutions to whatever is going on in their head. So we're learning something called neural coaching, and we're really learning how to integrate the different parts of the brain. And that gives us that unlimited intelligence I call divine. So really, what I'm teaching you today is how to integrate the brain in your coaching sessions. Now, remember, I said it was simple. You probably already knew this, didn't you? but put the science behind it, and I think it gives you more reason to go to that emotion quicker. Neuroscience law number 2, just as I said, emotions trump thoughts. Emotions are more powerful. So in wiring new neural pathways in the brain, our emotions are more powerful than our thoughts. Emotions actually are what wire in our limiting beliefs. And I always think of buried emotions block our divine intelligence. So even if that client is not upset about something today, if they have buried emotions over their lifetime and not processed them, not talked about them to someone, then their intelligence, their divine intelligence is going to be muted or brought down some, because in order to hold those emotions down inside their brain, they have to use a lot of energy. And that energy it takes to keep that emotion quiet is what takes away from their energy for life. Now, I got to tell you a story. When I invented a process for uncovering your divine intelligence about 20 years ago, and I used it. I was a clinical psychologist in a major medical facility, and I used it with patients there for many years until I kind of perfected the process. And then I heard about coaching. That was in the early 90s, and I couldn't get there fast enough because I was exhausted from working with really what we called mentally ill people. And we had such a medical model that people are broken, that when I heard the coaching philosophy that people are whole and complete, we just need to help them unveil that intelligence, I was so relieved that I couldn't wait to get there. So I took my process and I took it to ICF, and I said, I want, to get approval. I went through the process of filling it all out. And I said, I want to get approval so that I can teach this to other coaches. Well, that was about 12 years ago that I presented it, and ICF turned me down. Very, very clearly said, no, you are using a therapy model and we're not about therapy. So I think it was more in the infancy of our development as a career that we wanted to define ourselves as different from therapists. And I agree, we are totally different. However, in those years, we weren't so conscious of neuroscience and how the brain works. You really can't exclude emotion from your coaching, because when you do, you've excluded your most powerful point of change. When you detect emotion in your client's voice, or just if you see it, if you're coaching live, this is the most important and valuable moment you have as a coach. And sometimes we have, as coaches, it's kind of counterintuitive to say, tell me more about that emotion and take them down the tube, isn't it? But it is where they have sustainable change. So remember to talk about their emotions more, to expand talk about emotions with such questions as, let me give you some I ask. Tell me, as simple as, tell me more about what you're feeling right now. What emotion is coming up for you? And then continue going down the tube with them and say, what does that emotion look like? If you could draw a picture, tell me. Or tell me when you felt that emotion before. What is it similar to in your life when you feel that? And just continue to ask these questions that give them space and time, and remember, safety, to talk about their emotions. We very rarely go there in relationships. It's just we don't talk about our feelings. We have been taught by limiting beliefs that feelings are showing weaknesses. So if you can let that client go down the tube, you are giving them the opportunity to figure out their own answer to whatever challenge they're facing with. Because once they go down the tube and that emotion dissipates, you will just hear them say things like, oh, I get it. Now I know what I need to do. And it comes to them, and you don't have to coach them with quite so much difficulty. if you use emotions in this way. Emotion is our point of change. Now, also, I think ICF was very leery of my program because I do bring up the past some in my coaching. So again, neuroscience shows us why you do that if you want to get patterns. You know, we're not trying to just change something momentarily for someone. We're trying to move aside these huge limiting patterns that people have been in all their lives. This is what transformation is about. That's what the bigness, if you will, of coaching is all about, is transforming someone forever with that change. We need to look at the past some. The difference between therapy looking at the past and coaches looking at the past is that therapists spend a lot of time talking about the past and analyzing it, interpreting and all of that. So in my process, we go back to the past for one memory, and we just learn the pattern that memory shows us. So we have a specific reason. It's quick. We dip back and we look at it and we get out of it. If you stay too long in it, they could get involved in whatever feeling was there, their emotional set point, as you'll see in my demonstration in a minute. So memory guides and controls learning. So we have to look at the past some to get a full spectrum of how to use the brain to sustain change. So emotional processing prepares the brain and the rest of the body for action. Now, that's what we're about as coaches. We want people to engage in action. And so if we don't process those emotions, action will not be had. This is a great reference if you like to read about neuroscience. Dr. Daniel Siegel is one of my favorites, and he's written a book called The Mindful Therapist, A Clinician's Guide to Mindset and Neural Integration. And you could say the mindful coach, because what he's teaching you could be used as a coach. Remember, buried emotions never die. They never go away until you get them out and process them. So if you have a client that is lethargic or is not showing enough energy to change, one thing maybe you need to refer them to a therapist because they may have some depression. But if you feel like it's minimal, you can help by letting them talk about their emotions and just teaching them about how to do that. Because we know that just labeling one's feeling reduces amygdala activity. Just by saying, I feel sad today, and it's because my mother died 2 years ago today, just that statement from a client will open up their neocortex where that brain, that thinking brain, can be more powerful. So again, this is the same idea that the next law is approach, not avoid. And again, I think this is counterintuitive because negative emotions dissipate when you move into the emotion. And we as coaches sometimes stay in our head, and we don't want to see our clients get into emotions uncomfortable, perhaps for us. So begin to realize that it may be a counterintuitive act to go into how a client is feeling. You maybe think, and somebody needs to mute again. If you'll check your mute button, I can hear some noise. But we really do need to check out. So we go down the tube, don't we? Because emotions trump thinking. So we go down the tube, we come out on the other side with our brain integrated more, where we can use our neocortex and get the integration of both sides of coaching. So how does this law apply to our coaching? I'd love to hear you have some thoughts on the chat button yourself, if you've used this idea a lot in your coaching. But for me, good coaching depends on your understanding of the use of your client's emotions. So let's look at the next neuroscience law, and it's basically two different ways we can integrate the brain. Because again, brain integration is how we get full use of the balance of all parts of the brain, which is what we're looking for. So the emotional brain is balanced with the thinking brain. That's what we're looking for, is balance. And we call that a vertical integration. Just like I talked to you about the brain having the feeling and the thinking. Well, that's a vertical integration when you allow people to talk about their feelings. The neocortex, then you can put it in control as the master, and the limbic system becomes the servant. And that's ideal for a great coaching outcome. Now, if you want to balance the left side of the brain with the right side of the brain, that's a horizontal balance. We want to do that, then we want to put the right brain as the CEO and the left brain as the COO. That's kind of a general way to describe it. The right brain is the vision. Think of it as carrying the vision that a CEO would have, that creativity of, I think we can do this. This is some new software we just created, and this is going to make us a lot of money. Now, you know, that thought is wonderful, but as you know, if you can't carry it out, if you can't send that message across the colossal, well, I can't word it right, but if you can't send that message across to the left side of the brain, then you're stuck, aren't you? Because you only have a great idea. And so the left brain is the doer, is the action, and the linear thinking that says, in order to create this idea, you have to do this, 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 and this. So really, what this amounts to in your coaching is that you really have to allow someone to go to their right brain. And we are a left brain society. Daniel Pink has a great book out on that. But, excuse me, but in order to do that, it may feel to you like you're wasting time with someone just talking about their dreams. Excuse me. Let me give me a drink. So feel free to stay on the right side of the brain with dreams, with wonderful ideas, and don't be in a big hurry to say so much, well, what are you going to do about that? How are you going to put that into action? Because a lot of times, I know when I'm being coached and I am talking about this really great, creative idea, and my coach moves into action too quickly, I will usually stop them and say, no, wait, I got to talk about that a little bit more. And so we as coaches sometimes get too quick to go into action. And if you really let someone talk about their feelings and their right brain thoughts, they will automatically go into action when they are at that point that they're ready. So you don't have to do so much as a coach if you back off and you just let someone take the lead on talking about something they're passionate about. And eventually, they're going to say what they want to do about it. So don't get so scared. I know when I'm teaching ACC coaches, they say, it's more or less, what is your goal? And okay, now how are you going to get there? What are you going to do about it? And they skip all that wonderful space in between that we as humans need so desperately to talk to someone that doesn't rush us into action and doesn't roll over our feelings and our passion about whatever it is we're thinking about. So again, the right side of the brain is where all the emotion and the really, it's not really where the emotion resides, but it's where the creation of ideas reside. The out-of-the-box thinking is the right side of the brain, isn't it? So again, vertical integration is where you integrate 2 and 3 on the picture, the limbic brain and the thinking brain, by allowing the emotions emotions to dissipate, and putting the thinking brain, the neocortex, in charge of the brain. Now, I want to tell you a little bit more about emotions and how they relate to memories, because in my coaching demo, it will be really important that you understand this connection. So memory is a process which is based on altering the probability of neuronal firing. So memories are something happens to you and you create a neural pathway if that something keeps repeating itself and you keep having it happen several times. You have a stronger sense of the brain building an entire neural pathway. So let's do this demonstration. So if you'll close your eyes for just a minute and stop looking at the screen. Okay, thanks. Now, when I tell you to open your eyes, just begin to write down and even chat me some emotions that you feel when you see this picture. So again, I'm going to show you a picture and you begin to chat emotions. Just fire off words like anger or sadness or whatever comes up for you. Put it on the chat. I just want to see those feelings just really pouring in so that I can see that you're connected with what I'm doing. And then I'll show you how it all comes together. All right, start writing. Okay, Deb, are emotions coming through the chat? And you'll have to unmute.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Still coming. Sadness, horror, disappointment, anguish, shock, fear, fear, anger, confusion, worry, sadness, horror, disbelief, need to connect, in parentheses, isolation, unbelief, anger, helpless, shock.
Yes. All right. Because I'm going to ask one of you to unmute, and I just saw a name, Amelia. Would you unmute for me and talk to me just a minute? I just have a few questions I want to ask you to show what the impact on your brain of a trauma is. So, Amelia, are you there? You'll have to unmute before I can hear you. Are you there, Amelia?
Amelia, you can unmute at the same place where you muted yourself.
Yeah, up at the top of the screen and on my screen, you go up there and you'll see a mute button. And let's see, I see a woman named Lori on. So Lori, do you know how to unmute and get on the line with me? Just wanted to talk to you a minute. Anybody out there?
Maybe some people's mics aren't working, Dr. Jayne. Maybe you can try Nikki.
Okay.
Nikki Bahari.
Hi, this is Nikki. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Hi, Nikki.
Okay. Hi.
Yeah. So here's a question. I want to get that ugly picture off the screen. So tell me if you can remember where you were that day. I hope you're old enough to remember.
I am, yes.
Okay.
I was actually on my way to school. I was in my first year of college, and I actually remember seeing it relatively live on television on my way to school and thinking, gosh, like, should I go in? Like, what should I do? And so I went into class because we didn't know what was going on. And we were about like 10 minutes into class, and then they had kind of said, okay, we're going to release everybody. So of course, everybody left the class. There was this huge rush of people on campus. I was trying to call people on my cell phone, but like you couldn't get through because all of the lines were jammed up. And then so strangely, I ran into my boyfriend at the time, who's my husband now, on campus. And it was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, I'm glad you're okay. Like, are you going home? What are you doing? So, yeah, I remember that day, and then calling my mom, finally getting a hold of her, and we actually went to my grandparents' house later. So I remember just wanting to reconnect with people because it was such a strange and crazy thing that happened.
Yeah, and that's been so long ago, but it sounds like you can remember the details of that day as if it were yesterday.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, luckily for me, I didn't know too many people personally impacted from it, but it did seem like a day that kind of changed how people thought about what was going on in the world. And so, I remember it pretty vividly.
Yeah, so if I ask you, where you were like August the 1st, 2003, unless that was your birthday or something, do you remember where you were that day and what you were doing?
I don't know.
Well, the reason I say that's because I want to find out, why is it that we remember things?
Mm-hmm.
And because we remember things for a reason, and our brain is about survival. So we usually remember something that is, scary for us.
Yeah.
So what, as a nation, you were talking about changing our thoughts. What beliefs do you think we wired in that day? Because we usually wire in new beliefs when there's a memory like that. What belief do you think we wired in that day?
I think we thought about things a little bit differently, about both in a positive and a negative way. I think we thought about, wow, we're really connected with other people, either for better, right? Because we can support each other through difficult times.
Right.
We have the sense of nationalism around being Americans, but also in a negative way, potentially, that it did instill some fear of outsiders that I think we're still seeing play out today.
I do too. And I think, that one of the beliefs that I wired in, and many of us did, is that the world is no longer safe, especially on American soil, because we kind of thought nobody would ever dare to attack the United States. So when that happened, that kind of wiped out our sense of security. And you've probably seen reports and research that shows that if you were born after 9/11, you tend to have a higher fear factor of those sort of things. Our children are more afraid now than they used to because we've become so, protective of them. So thank you, Nikki, for sharing.
Yeah.
I wanted to, thanks, Nikki, you can mute again. But I was going to say that I've never asked a person, it doesn't matter who they are, if they were alive and old enough to remember that day, they remember exactly where they were. They remember everything that went on that day. And so what I'm using this for an illustration is that if we go back to the past and we look at our memories, that is where our belief system was formed. So they're little gems that we can just go back to and examine and find out what some of our real trip-ups are to getting to our goal, because they're going to be limiting beliefs and they can be uncovered within those memories. So the last neuroscience law before the coaching demo is that the repetition of emotion wires. So if you practice something over and over, and this is more about, I gave you this neuroscience law on how to put in a new belief, because we find our limiting beliefs and then we want to get rid of them and we want to put in a new one. So this is how we do it. We want something that's emotional because, again, that's how we wire. But this time when we put in a new belief, we want it to be a positive emotion. We want to be excited about our new belief. So it's a passionate feeling that goes around it, that you practice it. And that, of course, is the affirming and the becoming a mantra for us. So I'll tell you more about that after the demo. But remember that our beliefs can be uncovered by returning to those core memories. So remember that neural coaching is whole brain integration. It is, Daniel Siegel says that when we process those old memories and get that emotion out, we become closer to the corpus callosum, the little, I said the word this time, the little kind of an alleyway between the left brain and the right brain, when you can carry things across that way and integrate both sides of the brain. So get out your rewire worksheet, and it actually gives you the steps I'll be going through in coaching someone. So let's have somebody jump in. Now, here's the steps I'll give you. And this is kind of the uncovering your divine intelligence formula that I have. So we'll go through that. So, Deb, do you have a volunteer for me? Or anybody can volunteer that wants to just put their name out on the chat. And
I had indicated earlier that I would volunteer, but I'm more than willing to make this experience available to someone else.
Okay.
Would like to volunteer, and you have, I think they need a working mic, correct?
That's true. They have to be able to talk.
Okay, so if you would like to volunteer and you have a working mic.
You'd also, Deb, that also need a real goal that they're desiring to accomplish, maybe something that they've been stuck on, or they're really passionate about achieving this goal but feel like there's something holding them back. That's what my formula works well with, is someone that has a big goal that, is something that they have some hesitation about the fact that they can complete or not. So,
okay, so Demit, I have, okay. Let me just see here.
Okay, sure.
Dimitrika or Demetria? I think it's Dimitrika. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Now, do you also have access to video, Dimitrika?
I do.
Okay, so could you make that available as well? Excellent. There she is.
Okay, thanks, Deb. And hi there. And we may have more time to do someone else, but tell me exactly how to pronounce your name.
Demetrius.
Demetrius, okay. Well, first of all, thanks for volunteering.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I want to hear about your goal that you wish you could get to.
Okay, so currently I am a student at Liberty University, achieving my master's degree in coaching. I have a huge goal, and I've been having like some trepidation about how I'm going to actually do this. So this is a really big goal. I currently have a job, and I want to transition into coaching full time. So I need to know exactly how to do that. I'm an entrepreneur as well. And I've been where I've been home, working from home, and things didn't go well. There was a decline in clients. So I had some apprehension about how things went there. And then I came back into the workforce. And so now I want to leave again, but I have some, I'm not really sure. I have a lot of I'm not really sure.
You're not really sure about what?
I guess I have a lot of safety issues on how to do that.
Okay. And safety would be around income?
Yes.
Okay. Are you supporting someone?
Yes. Yeah, I'm a mother of 3. And so, yes.
You're supporting 3 children, you said?
Yes.
Oh, wow, I can see the trepidation. I get it. Whoa.
Yes.
Okay, so, and you had a negative experience earlier of doing that very thing that you're trying to do, and it didn't turn out so well.
Right, and it was successful for a little while, and then it just kind of declined, and it was really about not having enough clientele, and then the finances, then it just, kind of snowballed. And I didn't, I guess I didn't know how to stop the snowball. So the only answer I could think of was to go back to the workforce.
Sure. I think, it's a great challenge, and I think it's one that all of us as coaches face, because we want to do what we're passionate about, don't we?
Right, exactly. And that's it's a conflict within me. I'm so super passionate about it, and I so want to do it. I can see the vision, I can taste it, feel it, but it's like it feels like it's a goal that's like way over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to bridge it from where I am to there.
So today, well, first of all, let me ask you this. What would it feel like if it had happened and you were in that favorable position of in a stable coaching business? What would that feel like for you?
I would feel excitement. I would feel love. I would feel like my soul was satisfied because I want to be there to assist people in moving forward in life and their goals and processing through things. I think it just will be so satisfying mentally, emotionally, and spiritually for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a coveted place to be, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally see that.
About it kind of swells my heart. Like I get, it just excites me, and I'm like, I so want to do that, but it's like, you know.
How? Yeah. How is the key. Okay. All right. So, what do you think? Like, let's quantify it with how scared are you? You know, like if 10's a fear that's really, really high. What's your number right now?
I would say my number was about a 6.5.
Okay. Okay. So you have that much fear right now when you think about it, even.
Yeah, just
okay.
Of the financial security.
Sure. And so you know from what we just talked about that fear, it kind of blocks your thinking brain from being able to figure out how to get there.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So could we, if we lower that fear level today, would that move you toward your goal?
Yes. I think if the fear level was lowered, I could leap right in.
Okay. Okay. So you want to work on that? Is that?
Yes.
Okay. That's something that you think would lead you there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So go with me a place that may seem kind of strange for a minute, but remember a memory when you were a kid of some time when you were afraid of something. And if it can be a memory with your dad or your mom, it's probably going to be even better. So just open up your mind a minute and let memories kind of come and go. And in a minute, you'll feel like, that's the one I want to think about for a minute. So you can tell me which one you think we could talk about for a minute.
I think the biggest fear that I've ever had was getting in trouble.
Okay.
Like I did something wrong and, getting reprimanded by my mom, mainly my mom or my dad.
Okay. So what I want you to do is think of a specific time when you did get reprimanded by the one you're most afraid of, and tell me that exact memory.
Okay, there was a time that I went out with some of our friends that were in our neighborhood. We were supposed to be teenagers, but we were given privilege to go shopping without chaperone, and we were supposed to go for a certain period of time and then come back. But we did not come back until very, very late. And, a part of it was I wanted to be out and just be, it was a liberty thing. I felt so free. I'm making my own choices. I'm paying for my own stuff, even though that they gave me the money. But I'm doing this as an adult. And then feeling that semi-feeling. And then I didn't want it to stop. And so my friends and I were all in kind of agreement. We're just going to keep going and have fun. It's going to be okay. And everybody tried to reassure each other that, oh, they'll be okay. If you think that, you know, we're all together, and we were rationalizing it, and we just kept on going. And it was late. It was after dark. It was like 9, and we had pretty much been gone all day. And I started to approach the door by myself.
Whoa.
And I said, oh God, I am in so much trouble. I am in so much trouble. And I couldn't even grab the handle because I knew that, you know, this was not going to go well.
Yeah, you could already tell that
Yes.
this was
And
not
I
going
didn't
to
know
go.
how bad it was going to be. And I tried to figure that out, and I really couldn't.
What was your fear level at that point?
Oh my gosh, it probably was off the scale around about 15.
Yeah, I believe it. So what happened? What happened when you went inside?
Oh, I was definitely yelled at.
Yeah, they were not happy.
For like, it seemed like I never was going to get off punishment ever. So the punishment was like a month, and it was just seemed like it would just going on. And so I realized now as an adult, even after that month or period of time of punishment, there was a trust loss. So I didn't get that privilege again for a very long time.
So you were punished?
Yeah.
Okay.
So following the rules became my thing. Like I wanted to stay inside the rules.
Well, let me stop for just a second, and I want to tell the people listening something. So I want your help for a minute, because you're all coaches. You have a great mind for this. So I want you to chat with me what you think, just make a guess about what limiting belief that Demetrius came up with as a result of this incident. And so just start sending in your chats, and then Demetrius and I will discuss it, and we'll try to figure it out between the two of us. But, you know, let's make this a group, coach, where all of you feed in, because you may come up with something that she or I hadn't even thought of. So Demetrius, what do you think while they're doing that? What do you think you wired in your head at that moment about that memory? What do you think you put in your head?
I think, I really think that following the rules, staying within the guidelines became the strong point. That's what you do. You follow the rules, and then you don't have to receive, you know, that type of punishment. And the disappointment, I felt at that time that I disappointed my parents. So, you know, it made me feel bad and fearful. So I think that following the rules seemed to become like, that's what's pleasing to people if you stay inside that gate and don't go out of that and explore or do anything, just kind of work with the rules. So
if you were going to word it, let me just suggest a couple of things, but you tell me if it's your wording or not. You kind of make me think that an edict that you put in your head is always follow the rules or you'll be punished. That's one. Another one kind of goes around, but maybe even deeper, about feeling like you're a bad person because you let somebody down, that it sounds like you were a pretty good kid and maybe this was an exception. And so they were disappointed, you know, in you, and that made you feel like kind of a bad person.
Right.
Okay. So then one of the limiting beliefs might have been, I will be a bad person if I break the rules again.
Well, yeah, I could agree with that. And then I guess I now kind of have that maybe projection where if other people don't follow the rules, then that's not nice. That's not good.
Okay.
That's not appropriate or...
Sure. You kind of judge other people sometimes that way too. Yeah.
That's
well, there was one thing though that kind of I thought was real interesting about what you said is that you almost said when you did this that it was kind of a thing where you began to trust yourself a little bit. You were off alone and you thought, I think you said I pay my own way. I'm pretty trustworthy. I don't know if you were thinking that or not. Was that something I got?
Well, I guess I had the feeling of liberty and freedom. Like I'm paying this. I'm not like, it's not like, you know, you go to the store and you're doing the transaction, and that's kind of sort of what you saw the adults do. They did the transaction with the money, and I'm doing it, and I'm choosing my clothing, I'm choosing, I'm deciding, and that kind of thing.
So you kind of thought, I can handle this. I can do it.
Right. I can handle this. This is something I can do. I understand. I've seen it before. You know, so I've learned. I know I can do it theoretically. You know, of course, it all went well until I just kept going with it, with that sense of freedom and liberty, and you know.
Yes, I was thinking one of the beliefs might be I can't trust myself to go too far in freedom. You know, I can't let myself go. I have to kind of reel myself in a lot. Okay. So I've come up with 3. One is I can't trust myself to be totally on my own or free. And then another one was that if I break the rules again, I'll be a bad person. And then the third one was follow the rules or you'll be punished. Now let's see, Deb, did anybody send in any? Did you just read them out?
Oh yeah, we've got lots. So
okay. So before you read them, Demetrius, what I want you to do is listen to these, and I want you to notice the one that has some fire around it, some real, you know, it really brings you to a point of emotion. So as you listen to it, write down one that you think is particularly important.
Okay.
I can't be spontaneous.
Okay.
I must follow rules. I get in trouble if I don't follow the rules. It's not good to step outside the lines. Having fun and going with the flow leads to trouble. Keep inside the lines. If she steps outside expectations, she's wrong, and foregoing rules is punishable. Here's another one, another perspective, interesting. Don't disappoint loved ones. Another interesting question, am I loved? Must follow the rules instead of own inner guidance. I might lose the trust of others if I don't follow the rules. Breaking the rules makes others not trust me.
Okay. Thanks, team. That was some great ideas. So, Demetrius, which one do you pick?
Okay, so the one that I picked is I can't be spontaneous.
I liked that one too. Instantly, when she read that, I thought it sounded like what happened to you. Okay, so that's the one that we're going to pick is your limiting belief. You know, we're going to say that's your most limiting belief.
Okay.
So now, here's what we want to do next is, let me go back a second. So I want to look at, and I want you to think about, how does that belief hold you back from creating that dream of a coaching practice?
Well, I think that entrepreneurship is more is a sense of freedom, and it doesn't have boundaries because you're the creator, in a sense that you have the liberty to just kind of make it happen, or you know, and I just don't know. You know, I can feel it, like I feel the ability, and I know that I can do it because I've done it. But then it didn't all work out exactly how I thought it would. Like it was, the growth process didn't happen. So I'm kind of wondering about, it was a step out on faith kind of thing for me. And then I'm wondering, like, if I do that again, like, oh my gosh, like, what is going to happen? Like, will it all fall apart? I need to have a really strong plan. It has to be like ironclad, because I can't do it spontaneously. I cannot just step out and not have no idea of where I'm going or what I'm doing, or have some type of plan. Even if the plan doesn't fully work the way that I expect it to, 100%, I need to have something that's going to provide security.
Yeah, that's great insight. I think, you told about that you did that a couple of years ago, and it's like now you've got 2 times in your life, you've repeated that same pattern to prove that you can't do it. It's like that's more powerful than if it was just that early memory. So it's like those memories like that, those limiting beliefs become self-fulfilling prophecies that, we just keep on doing and doing and doing. So I'm sensing that you want to tell something to that teenage girl that could help change her life. If you could go back and tell her something about that incident that would be being an advocate for her, what would you tell her?
Wow. I guess I would say that it wasn't all wrong. I did go, and I was able to go where I was to shop. I was able to purchase things, and and I was able to bring those things back home.
Yeah.
So that part was a good thing, and then understanding. I think I would tell her to understand why my mom was so upset, why my parents were so upset, which would have been because they wanted to protect me. And that's why they gave a time limit on where I could go and what I was supposed to be doing.
Sure. Well, could I tell you what I'd like to say to that young girl?
Oh, yes, please.
Because what came up for me when you're telling that story was I had a sense of admiration for that teenager that had the guts to know. It's kind of like, I liked the spirit in you, the spirit of that adventure, going off by yourself and exploring and testing the waters and thinking, I can do this, I love that bravado, that you have at that age. And I want you to bring back that spirit, because it's who you are, I think. I think that's the real you. It's like we talk about that ipseity, or that divine intelligence you have in the beginning of your life. I think it was there for you. But, you had some limits slapped down over the top of it, and then you had all that fear that just kind of took, I think you just wiped out the baby with the bathwater. You said, go away. Don't ever do that again. Don't ever be that spirited person who launches out on their own.
Okay.
So I'd like to tell you, I think you're still that person. And I think you can do it, because now you have the years of maturity behind you. You have 2 things now. If you could bring back that spirit, then you could, use your knowledge of life that you've gained in the last few years and jump out on your own and be successful. What do you think?
I think I can. Yeah, I think I can. I'm definitely going to continue that thought process, because that was very
Well, what I urge you to do is to write that little girl a letter and stay totally her advocate. Don't go to, well, I understand mom and dad. Don't go to that point of view, even though I know what you mean by that. But just stay with, honey, I'm so sorry that turned out that way, because you really did a good thing. And you didn't think through it quite far enough because you stayed out too late. But, the whole general thing was pretty brave, and just write her, because then if you write enough, you'll dissipate that emotion. And that's what we want to do, so that your neocortex can jump in and take over here, because you can do this, don't you?
Yes, I do.
I could tell, you can do it, but that fear stands in the way.
Right.
So if you write that letter, you can get past that fear, and then you'll be able to write that plan down that you said you want.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
That would be a good release.
Yeah, so tell me, what is your fear level now? You said you had a 6.5 going into this. Where are you now?
I actually feel probably at about a 2.5.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I would have never thought about her. I would have never thought that that's where it was.
Mhm. Well, I got to tell you something else I just thought of. This is so exciting. You know what I just thought of is I think that same spirit volunteered today.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, that's pretty gutsy. I mean, it's hard to just say, "Oh yeah, I'll do that." You know, when you know, you're going to have to be very transparent. So you've still got it in you, girl. I know you do.
Okay, I do. That is true. That's
Well, I wish you the best, and
Thank you so much.
I can see you doing it myself.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Feel free to email me or call me if you want even more resolution, and we can talk more. Okay.
Okay, sounds great. Thank
Right.
you.
Yeah. Congratulations. Thank you very much for doing that. Okay. So now Demetrius can mute again, and let's look at some of the beliefs, because I want her to also create a new belief. And this is how she would do it. So we want to make it a safe belief. We want to use the present tense. We want to say I am, positive wording, and you want to put some feeling in it. So Demetrius, I would encourage you to write down a new belief here. And you might say something like, I am capable of creating my own coaching business. Or an even stronger one would be, I create my own coaching business and I am independent financially. But you word it in your own words. And then I want you to, as you say that to yourself, I want you to put the passion you said you had for being that way. You said it was soul satisfying. So I want you to feel that way and say that to yourself. And I want you to say it, this is a minimum of 100 times a day for 21 days. So that way, and this is how the brain works. The brain doesn't know how to wipe out a limiting belief, but when you put a new one in and you don't use that old one, it falls away. So take the time, Demetria, to put in that new belief. It takes some time. And I always, you have to have that feeling, but I hope that uncovering and putting in this new belief will put you into action toward getting to your goal. And I think maybe the one action step, although I didn't ask you this, was to eventually come up with that plan. And that would be, define what we're doing in coaching. So think about this quote, because this does sound theoretical at times to people, to change your brain, to actually change the architecture of your brain. But remember, things are always impossible until they're done. And I have many clients that have done this. So I encourage you to take the time it takes to redo your brain, to rewire it so that you can get to your goal. So now we have about 7 or 8 minutes left, and I'd be glad to take any questions if you'll chat them in to Deb. Then I'll be glad to answer any questions you have about this or any comment that you want to make.
Dr. Jayne, there are a few questions about getting a copy of the PowerPoint and or the recording. And Noah Ronan, who is our chapter president, has already replied to everyone on chat, letting them know where we will upload the recording of this. We have a YouTube channel, and you can find the link to that channel on our website banner, and that is where we will be uploading that link, and we will make sure that you get a copy of it as well, Dr. Jayne, because I know that you said you wanted one. There were a few people who had to leave to go to meetings, comments like, thank you, great webinar, Dr. J. Thank you for the insightful coaching demo. Any other questions, folks? You can either put them in the chat, or since we're at the end, if you do have mic capability, unmute yourself and speak them.
Yeah, and I had a little shameless self-promotion here. I have a book out that you can get on Amazon. And this is, the reason you'll like this is it's a story about a client and me coaching them through. It's an executive that I coached. He had lost his job and wanted to make more, all of a sudden start making, of course, money again. And so if you want to read, it's a direct word verbatim of me coaching someone through the process I've developed called the Divine Intelligence Process. So I'd love for you to buy the book. You can buy it on my website at gardnerinstitute.com, or you can get it off of Amazon in a e-version. So that's what I've got to offer you more
We
of.
do have we have a question here, which is interesting. When does this model work best, or conversely, are there scenarios where it does not work well?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I would caution you not to use this technique unless you had enough time. Don't ask that memory question when you have 10 minutes left in a session, because you want to spend enough time debriefing. I would have spent in real life a lot more time than I did, but you don't want to rush someone on that, nor leave them in that memory, because they're in a lower state of success and confidence when they're in that memory. So you want to take your time to bring them back out of it. And then what I usually do is ask someone for a positive anchor at the very beginning, where we can take them back to that positive anchor, a time when you were very successful. And so I could have asked Demetrius to give me that if we'd had enough time at the very beginning, of tell me a time that you felt very successful in your life. It doesn't have to do with creating a coaching practice, just any time when you did something very successful. And I think that would have helped keep her safe.
Wonderful. Here's another one. If I was only to read one of Dan Siegel's books, which would you most recommend? And then a second part to that question, are your training classes approved for ICF continuing education credits?
Yes, they are approved. I didn't tell you, I finally got ICF approval for my coach training.
They finally saw the light.
They did. They did. They congratulated me on my different kind of thinking. But yes, the classes are available. I can't remember now the question, Deb. Tell me again.
Oh, this are your training classes? Well, okay, so those are approved. The previous question was, if I was only to read one of Dan Siegel's books, which would you most recommend?
Yeah, I would recommend The Mindful Therapist. And again, it can be applied to coaching. And
okay, so that was, and I wrote that down. So that was The Mindful Therapist, Clinician's Guide to Mind, Sight, and Neural Integration.
Correct. That's a great one.
And then another one that came in, what can you do to bring people back from the response you evoked with the 9/11 photo?
Wow, I'm not real sure what that one's asking. How to bring them back from the response?
Yeah, I guess to kind of replay. I'm assuming this is from, if I may announce this is from Jayne Norton. Jayne, do you have mic capabilities? Are you able to clarify further?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So my sense is that the image evoked a lot of memories and deep emotions from people, and I just wonder if any people, if that's bringing up things that may keep being triggered, and that there might be a way to Diffuse that.
Diffuse that. Yes, absolutely. And go back to your neuroscience law of approach, not avoid emotion. So again, always use writing as a way to help your client and just tell them to write about it. And we always have a fear, I think, that they'll get caught up in that and not get out. But it doesn't happen. Once you move into an emotion, if you go with it, it will eventually dissipate. So that would be a great way to get people out of that if they're still affected by a picture like that. And really, we all are. I mean, it's been so many years, but I still see that picture and the emotion comes up. So I'm not sure that we've all totally, unwired ourselves from that one.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I see that we're at time. Dr. Jayne, please accept our sincere appreciation. I'm so glad that Sissy had recommended you for this webinar so many months ago. We really, really appreciate the insight that you have provided to us, and also some of the practical tools for doing this that you shared. And then if I may, I'm going to make a shameless plug for ICF Raleigh chapter, a few upcoming events for those who are still left on the call. Next Thursday, the 27th, we have one of our cutting edge conversations. That is ending the coaching contract, and there's a question that's associated with that afterwards. That will be hosted at a location. It looks like it's maybe a private location in Cary, but Debbie Laxer will be our facilitator. And you can find all of the details for that cutting edge conversation on our website. On Friday, November 11th, that will be our last book club for 2016, I believe. That is The Power of Habit. Julia Carolina, who has been our coordinator for book club, will be the facilitator that day. Again, all details to be found on the website. And very importantly, as we approach the holiday season, please save the date now for our holiday social, which will be on Wednesday, December 14th in the evening at Mez Contemporary in Durham. Thank you all so much for coming. Within the next 24 to 48 hours, you will receive a survey so that you can provide your feedback about this webinar to all of us. Sorry for the phone ringing in the background. And along with that, you will be receiving 1.5 continuing education credits for your participation in this webinar. And I see, Dr. Jayne, that you have your contact information here. So this is not really going to appear on the recording per se, or yes, I think maybe it will. I'm sorry. Any last words, Dr. Jayne?
Sorry, I'd already muted. Just thank you for having me. I enjoyed being with you guys, and bless your whole chapter. I hope it's successful and it continues to grow. We need more coaches out in this world, don't we?
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and your insight. Everyone, have a great afternoon, and we'll see you at one of our next upcoming ICF events.
Okay, bye-bye.